to No Excuses. My name is Mary Fran, and today we are going to talk about what I read last week. And I actually had a busy week of reading. They were very lighthearted, romantic little ditties, and so they went fast. So without further ado, I read 4 books. The first 2 were by the same author. They were in a series. One was Calling on the Matchmaker, and the other one was Saved by the Matchmaker. They were both about the same family. They were about an Irish family in the turn of the century. And they were talking about an Irish family that actually followed the old order rules. And one of those was that you actually found a matchmaker for your children and you made a match that way. And in each of these books, they went to a matchmaker for their daughters. Now, neither one of these daughters really wanted to be married. One of them wanted to go to be a nun, and the other one had some other issues. And they did this. There were issues with the men, where the men, had baggage, whatever. And of course, there was angst and whatever. It was a typical romantic story, both of them. And of course, they love triumphs. Rank them a solid 3. They were a nice, easy read. It kind of just set you back into a different period of life and just kind of opened your eyes, and it was just a feel good. Liked it. The next book that I read was called Backwards in Oregon. This was also another little romantic story. This was set in the 1800s, mid-1800s, before the Civil War, and it was about a gentleman who had fought as a man in the Mexican War and had lived as a man for the years afterwards. And they ended up seeing a prostitute with a child and yanked at their heartstrings for some reason, and they married them and kept up a platonic relationship because it was a business relationship. And they got on a wagon train and they were heading west. The wife didn't realize that person was a man. It was just a whole long story. Eventually she finds out. It was kind of a lesbian love interest at the end, and that doesn't really float my boat. To each his own, but doesn't really do it for me. So if you're not into that, don't read this one. It was a good book, irregardless. It just wasn't a subject that I particularly find sexy. So anyway, it's still a solid read. Because of that aspect, it's going to be ranked lower, but it was a good read. It was well written. It was an easy read. I mean, there you go. If you are interested in the life of a soldier or a woman that actually dressed as a soldier or lived as a man back in the 1800s, which it did happen, then it's still a good book, irregardless. The last book I read was a nonfiction, because I'm still working on reading nonfictions. I counted up last night, I have read 30, at least 30, nonfiction for the year. My goal was 12, so I bought 2 more nonfiction. I bought them at the Gettysburg bookstore. I'm reading the one right now, and I have another one, which should be an easy read. So I'm going to have at least 32, but right now 30, so I did really good. Anyway, I digress. Prairie Man, Dean Butler. I don't know about you, but if you're my age, you've seen Little House on the Prairie. If you haven't lived under a rock, you've probably seen Little House on the Prairie. Halfway through the show, they actually introduced Almanzo Wilder, who was Laura Ingalls Wilder's future husband. And that actor was Dean Butler. So when I saw it, I was just looking for something, and I just needed a book to read. And I was laying in bed, and that one came up. And Dean Butler. I thought, what could go wrong? I like Little House on the Prairie. I've been infatuated with the book since I was young. I watched all them in the 70s when they came out. I remember watching them on Monday nights with my dad, blah, 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 blah. Well, his book was dry. It seemed very disjointed. The first part of it was just this person was my grandparents, and he met this person, and this person, and my parents were cousins, and blah 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 blah. And it was just there, and then building up to his time at there, it was just random things. If you like Dean Butler's works as a whole, watch. The book would be probably more interesting. I'm just interested in Almanzo. So for me, the book was dry. It just didn't seem, I struggled with the book, honestly. Just say how I struggled with it. It was not a biography that really totally interested in. It was just, it just seemed, yeah. His time on there is, when he started talking about his time there, it just seemed like it was just random stories that he just pulled out of the sky to talk about. I don't know. I just wasn't impressed. Win some, you lose some. Anyway, this upcoming week might be a little lower in books because I have a very thick book that I'm reading, a nonfiction. I'm very excited about it. I also have on my Kindle, on my iPad, another nonfiction that I had on hold at the library. So I'm reading that one. And yes, I'm reading two at the same time. The one is in paper form, so I have to have a light on. The other one I like read before I go to bed. It's just an easy one that I can just grab, or like early in the morning if I wake up before the alarm, so I don't have to turn the lights on. So I'm kind of flip-flopping back and forth between the two. The one that I'm reading, I had it on hold. I just started it last night, and I'm not sure I like the way it's read. It's kind of there. We will get to those next week. But right now, read 4 this week. The first 2, solid books. I rank a solid book that I like as a 3. It has to be a love for me to go higher, but they were a solid 3. The Backwards to Oregon, that was to 2 because of the subject matter, just not something that I do. And the Prairie Man, Dean Butler, 2 also. And that was generous. Anyway, get out, read. Reading is amazing because you just open your mind to different experiences, different aspects. You just learn. Anyway, no excuses.